Graves, your host on The Power of Money, and I'm honored to have you as a part of my world in this coming segment. With The Power of Money, as you know, we are interested in three things. First, that you get the necessary education so that you and your family will have the information to do well in these difficult times. The second thing I'm interested in is for you to be empowered to prosper. I want only the best for you, but you can't get that if you don't have the education and then the drive to make it happen. And the final thing, and perhaps the most important thing, is that you be energized. Because life is more than a journey. Life is about living. And so I want you to learn these things and to be empowered and encouraged and energized. I'm Michelle Graves. Now here we go.
Well, thank you for being a part of The Power of Money, and I am your host, Michelle Graves, affectionately known as the Money Lady for the past 40 years throughout the United States and internationally. And for those of you that have watched me over the many, many years that I've done television broadcasts, this show is an information show. I'm not hyping any particular company or product. What I am here is to provide you with information and resources and people on specific subject matters to assist you and your family during these incredibly turbulent years. The last 2 years have just been off the chart. They have been, with people losing their jobs, with companies shutting down, with so many people out of work. And I felt, and then the number of people that are very simply leaving Earth as a result of sickness from this COVID virus, but also leaving Earth because of other issues as well, namely aging or chronic conditions that don't get resolved, such as diabetes and COPD and heart issues. But because of all of this that's taking place right now at this point in history, I thought it to be extremely important and even critical that I deal with the subject that I'm going to be talking about for the next hour. So please sit down and listen, because this is a hard truth. But at my age, and I say that without any kind of hesitancy, 70 is real. I've been doing television for 32 years, if you can believe that, all in the non-commercial venue. I believe that to do things justice, you have to be willing to share things openly, and you don't want to have advertising, censoring, and measuring and all that. So I'm delighted to say that I've been a part of the DATV family in Dayton, Ohio. Although I don't live in Dayton, I live in Cincinnati, but I make that drive to Dayton because Dayton is a fascinating city. It really is. And the staff at DATV is incredible. And my producer, Ben Artis, along with the in-house associate Melissa Constantine, have just been my standbys for over 8 years. And I love them. So I say all this because we're going to be spending this next time, right now, we're going to be talking about legacy, what it is, why it's so important right now, and the things that you need to know. I'm going to be using, and not to offend other faith believers, but I am going to be using parallelisms at some point with regard to the issue of legacy, because the God that I serve is a big proponent of legacy and believes it to be essential for the survival of the family. If you have nothing to pass on other than anecdotes and phrases, that will fade out. That will fade away. People will simply not remember you. They'll look at a picture, they won't have an understanding. So I want to deal with the issue of legacy today. What is legacy? What are the steps that you need to put into place in your own family? How you can do legacy even if you don't have children, and what are your opportunities and options? This is so important. No matter what your age, you can really begin to frame Your life experience on earth is about family. Now, I don't really have a lot to say to people that don't share my viewpoint. That's perfectly okay. But I do encourage you to consider the information I'm sharing, because at some point you're going to be faced with decisions, and without a context, you won't have an understanding of what type of decisions may be best for you in your circumstances. It's just hard to get around family. And I say this because when you see people that transition from life to death, and they have no one, and I do mean what I'm saying, they have no one. It is the saddest thing in the world. It is that they have lived this life, and now that it's time to leave this life, they have no one, period. And so I don't believe that's what your decision making would lead you to be. I believe that many times people make decisions because they don't have all the information, or what they're deciding on may perhaps be a little skewed and needs to be brought into balance. And I'm a real believer in balance and things being done in an orderly way to avoid confusion for other people, because they can't interpret what you're thinking. They can only filter what you're saying and come to their own conclusions. So without further ado, let's talk about legacy. And legacy is, again, leaving an inheritance for your children and grandchildren, and for your community and even the nation. We have great men and women throughout the world who understood legacy. And as a result, when you're studying history in high school or college, you will come upon their names because they did things that set them apart from other people. Well, you don't have to be a great leader or person to leave legacy. What you do have to do is have an understanding of what it is and why it's so important. So I'm going to go on into, I'm just going to dive on in it. Okay, here I go. The first thing about legacy, if you want to lay the plans properly in place, is let's look at what the Bible says about legacy, because God's really big on that. If you will go into the New Testament, for you Bible students, you will see a lengthy exegesis on the family lineage, earthly lineage of Jesus Christ. It's right there, and it trails all the way back. And you say, what is this about? Again, he's authenticating, God is authenticating this man, Jesus, in terms of his human lineage. And it shows just a variety of people that were in that stream, that lineage that culminated in the birth of Jesus Christ. In the same wise, if you will look at other scriptures, if you're inclined to, and I believe you're probably smart and you'll want to, you will see other accounts as well of the issue of lineage, who these people are, where they came from, why were they different and unique, why was Esau forfeiting his birthright, such a horrible thing, and his scoundrelly brother getting it. Why was that such an offense to give up your legacy for food? Now, it is what it is, but again, we get a flavor of the importance of family and history. And my question to you is, do you know your great-great-great-grandfather? Do you know him by family legacy, or did you have to use a service like Ancestry or whatnot and try to trace your beginnings? The technology is there, but again, it's kind of hard to construct a story when all you have is data. And I know, again, data is better than nothing, but what I'm trying to share with you today is that it's very important that you look at legacy as a part of being in a family and looking at all your relatives, if you come from a big family, I do, and versus a small family, which many of you may, and again, understanding what and why that's important. Because legacy settles the matter with who you are. It also settles the matter as in terms of what brought you to where you are today. So I start by saying the first thing about legacy and how to successfully maneuver so that you can have a great outcome as you grow older and even transition. And that when the funeral occurs, or whatever method of burial you choose, cremation or whatever, at least there'll be something that says substance, value, superior excellence. That is what legacy is about, so that when your family says their goodbyes, it will be with a sense of joy, because you really did fulfill the mandate of legacy. You passed good stuff on, and it will be honored and remembered, hopefully, now that I'm sharing all of this, that if God thought it was important for Lord Jesus Christ to have a lineage that was published and printed with names, then you should not feel any differently, okay? So let us begin by saying, legacy begins with an understanding of the true purpose of life, which is not acquisition of things and money, but the true purpose of life is to be a blessing continuously into your family, okay? And it goes by understanding spiritually, why are you here? Why am I here? What is all of this about? Why do I only have an appointed time and I'm not here anymore? And where do I go, and does it matter? For a lot of people, it doesn't. For a lot of people, it does. They truly don't want to leave Earth with things incomplete and to a destiny unknown. So, again, it's your spiritual foundation, that it starts first with that. And I can say that because I'm a high achiever, all these accomplishments. But let me tell you from my heart of hearts, if I did not have a right relationship with the Creator and His Son, and that's my belief system, that would be a problem, because it would skew everything in terms of how I looked at people, situations, and life. We are commanded while we're on earth to be kind and loving to each other, to not be mean-spirited, to be gracious and forgiving. These sound like platitudes, but why would He say it? Why would He say it if He didn't expect us to do it? So again, you can't do things that you don't know to do, but I'm telling you that if you are of the Christian faith, or if you are of the Jewish faith, you already know that forgiveness and love and joy and peace and all those things are fundamental characteristics of having the attributes of Godness, period. So you start with that. And if your act isn't together in that arena, it's going to make it kind of difficult for you to appreciate and focus on passing something down. If you don't have a good story, and when I say a good story, a life story that speaks well of your inside man, not who people see on the outside, because that can vary, but who you really are on the inside, and the person that you were created to be, that agent of love and understanding and compassion and joy, that person that is inside of you, that longs for expression. And the expression starts with the family. And then again, it branches into your associates, your community, the nation, etc. But let's just start with the spiritual. And like I said, if you don't have that together, this is all going to be moving forward or progressing. It's going to be a little challenging. But I encourage you, if you don't have that going on, get that worked out. Because nothing is more sorrowful I'm not kidding you. Nothing is more sorrowful than to have lived out your life aimlessly, trying to figure out what next, what job next, what better. I mean, it's bigger than that. It's more encompassing, more thorough, more complete than just a transitory look at me type of thing. Because me doesn't count much in the total scope of life. We are billions of people all over the world, grains of sand. And each one of us has been fit to bring something of extreme value to this planet Earth, and that is love unconditional. Oh yeah, love unconditional. Doesn't mean you like them, but you are compelled to love them because we all spring from the same source. How can you hate your brother? How? How can you say mean and do mean things against your sister? How? Because you don't have a comprehension of God and his very nature and essence. Okay? Now, if you've got your spiritual and you now understand why it's important, then we can now focus on the second thing that is a part of legacy planning, legacy building. And again, I'm laying a foundation because it makes no sense for me to talk to you about money and bequests and setting up trust accounts if your fundamental core, the core of who you are, is not good and positive and does not radiate hope and peace and joy. It's just a waste of my time. I'm telling you, I've been dealing with money for over 40 years. I have truly seen the best and the worst. And I will tell you, you don't want to be on the worst side. You want to be on the best side so that when people do say their goodbyes to you, they can say a little bit more than, she was a nice lady or he was a good guy. They can say substantive things, and then your children and grandchildren, and pray that you do, can say as much. So the second thing after your spiritual foundation is going to be your infrastructure. The infrastructure is what holds a building in place. Okay, it is. It's the brick and mortar of a building. In our case, the infrastructure is, in my opinion, a combination of your thoughts, your belief systems, how you were raised, how you were taught to participate in life, and your filtering. That's your infrastructure. Who am I? Who am I? And why is it so important that I leave something to someone else down the road? Why is that so important? That's infrastructure. If you don't know who you are, then any path will work. And I'm suggesting to you today that there are key components for people that understand legacy. It's not random. It's not hypothetical. It does not appear here and go there. Infrastructure is the tools, the nuts, the bolts, the brick and mortar that establish who you are, period. And everybody, whether you know it or not, there is an infrastructure. But a wise person will know what their infrastructure is. What makes me who I am, as opposed to who you are. And that is my infrastructure. That's what defines who I am. It can go back to your family values and how you were exposed, your culture. In my particular case, I am a Kentuckian, proud Kentuckian, I might say, Kentucky Colonel. I was raised in a rural environment with people that didn't have much, but we had a tremendous amount of community involvement, community support, and love for each other. Love for each other. My joy and my delight was being with my family. I was raised like that. Therefore, I took that into the real world because my world was a world of sharing. We shared food. We shared everything. Sharing. It wasn't me and me only. Therefore, as an adult, because it's a part of my infrastructure, I'm real big on sharing, helping, assisting other people to become who they need to be. I don't have a problem with that because that's a part of my infrastructure. Another part of my infrastructure is that I came from a two-parent home with a loving father and a mother who were both rural as well. So I'm accustomed to seeing certain things in a marriage that occur, a man being responsible for providing for his wife and children, his wife working collaboratively with him. That's how I grew up. That's a part of the infrastructure, listeners and viewers, okay? That constitutes who I am. Then I went from there to, again, the church world, which was in the day everything. You weren't going to be in Kentucky and not go to church all day. So as children, we grew up accustomed to a community and a loving community. Not all this meanness and viciousness. We grew up having great fun and, again, in church all day on Sunday. But we could sneak cookies and candy. And it was there that I learned, because the preaching was so long and children, I learned to read the Bible. I read the book of Proverbs as my starter book. I sat under the bench and I read the Bible. And my goodness gracious, at 8 years old, I knew what expectations were in terms of where we stood as God's people. Again, infrastructure. I'm using myself as an example. You can find your way as well. You may not have come from a two-parent family, but whatever family structure you came from, that's a part of your infrastructure. And at some point, you're going to have to make a rest in peace with that, because that defines who you are. If you were a quiet child, an introspective child, most chances are you may be the same as we speak today. As a child, I'm serious, I was always fascinated with everything. I love to grow things. I love to see tomatoes, and I love to chase chickens and all that kind of stuff. I like to be barefoot. I like to feel the sun against my brown skin, okay? As an African American, that was an infrastructure. Why? Because you already know that Kentucky in the day was not cool, but family was. So we were able to look at these behaviors and pretty much say, well, that seems to be a problem with them. And I'm not going to make it a problem with me, because that's not how I grew up. My family was everything. My parents were everything. And again, my father is a provider. He wasn't going to let anything harmful happen to me. So again, I'm trying to tell you the importance of infrastructure in leaving a legacy. It makes no sense for you to talk about all the things you want to do with your children and family if your infrastructure is not consistent with your goals and objectives. At that point, you're going to have to make decisions, choices. Do I want to mimic what I was raised to be? Because a lot of people, as we speak, are carrying that decrepit, pathetic infrastructure that they define as their beginnings. But everybody has a beginning. Everybody. We all have a story. We all have an experience. We do. It's called life and how life begins. But how it begins does not determine where it will end with you, because as you cross into maturity and adulthood, you will begin to see flaws in your family. You will begin to see things you may not like. You may begin to see things that say, I don't really fit in. So again, having made these eureka moments, whoa! Now you have the task of identifying, okay, this is my infrastructure, and I'm real clear. There's no question about it. I've dealt with people over the years whose mother and parents were not good parents. They were abusive and self-serving. Many of them were alcoholics. Many of them were into drugs. And the child was impacted by her or his infrastructure. But the problem was, when they became adults, they did not know how to look at it and say, okay, I am no longer a child, I'm an adult, and I need to make some changes in my life so that I don't repeat what I experienced. It's so important to know those limitations. You can do better. You must do better in order to leave a legacy of hope, because that's the big legacy for people that have been through hellacious childhood that has framed their infrastructure. It's what you experienced, but it does not define the end, because you may very well be the perfect person to leave the legacy of overcoming and accomplishment and hope in spite of. But if you don't know infrastructure, you can't even begin to set goals. You can't even begin to say, you know what, I came from a home of alcoholism and a home of abuse, and guess what? I left, and I said next, and went on. And if you can't seem to get beside it or beyond it, by all means, I encourage professional therapy. Why? Because it helps to help you to unwrap this stuff so you can begin to define the legacy you want to leave for your family, your children, your grandchildren, great-grandchildren for some of you, and your community at large, because we are suffering today in this country, okay? It's deeper than COVID. COVID created isolation, forced isolation. But I share with people, but a lot of you all been isolated anyway. You don't engage with people. You don't want to be bothered. You, as one woman said, I don't even like people. I said, so you're telling me you don't like yourself? Because you is people. Okay. Not joking. So, again, first, spiritual. Second, to recap, infrastructure. Who am I? What defines me? And do I need to begin to make choices? Now, if you have children and you have ignored your infrastructure, you may find yourself ironically replicating that infrastructure, because subconsciously that's all you know, until you can begin to piece it out, parcel it out, pull it out, and say, you know what, this is not good. You will train that child to replicate your experiences, even though they haven't. Their infrastructure will look ironically like yours, and yet they didn't experience that. And so I share with particularly young parents, don't be mean around your children. Don't be out of control around your children. Don't replicate bad behavior from your parents, mother, father, whomever. Don't do it, because your child will replicate that. That's the legacy you have deposited into them, so that when they become adults and they haven't been taught, look, this is real. Learn your family. Learn as much as you can about them, and begin to identify, who am I? And begin to look at what can work for you in this great world that we live in, with billions of people inhabiting this planet called Earth, along with animals and bugs and plants and insects, everything, rocks, and everything's down here. But it was essentially, Earth is a marvelous place. It's a beautiful place, carefully designed by a higher power. Not you and not me. We just get to occupy rent-free, I might add. So be respectful of your landlord. Okay? Don't just say and do anything, because that tells me you don't understand infrastructure and the importance of it in carving out your life. Now, the third thing I bring in is intentionality. Intentionality is you do things clearly expecting certain outcomes. Otherwise, you don't do it. You do things that will take you to certain points. You say things with an understanding that as you declare positive things, you bring into force the energy that can prepare you to propel. Okay, it's preparation. Okay, it's no guarantees. But when you're intentional about a thing, and I'm going to give myself as an example again, I said I love plants, I love animals, I love dirt, I like to grow things. And I determined very early in my childhood, because I lived with parents that encouraged me to be whatever I wanted to be, okay, as long as it was positive and it contributed to the well-being of people. I wanted to be a scientist. To be specific, I wanted to be a biologist. I was just fascinated with that whole field. And in the 3rd grade, I wrote in my autobiography, yeah, we had to do that back then. Because teachers understand intentionality. They're intent on you learning. That's intentionality. So I wrote this, and I stayed consistent with what I said. The things that, when obstacles came, it didn't matter because I was intentional about what I believed was my life purpose and expression. And as an adult, and I was also, because of my roots in helping people, in high school, I became the first African-American president at my high school in the 10th grade of the American Red Cross chapter. And my goal in the 10th grade, intentionality, was that there should not be poor people on this planet, not when they're rich people. And at that time, I began raising money for women and children in Guatemala. Okay, now I'm telling you, do the math. That's a long, long time ago. I was 14 years old. And I raised money and I knocked on doors and I recruited people to help me. And you know what? I'm still doing that. I'm still doing it because, again, that is who I am, along with biology. You know, I got involved as a biochemist, but also in finance because I love money and I love numbers. I love numbers. I got involved with shea butter 20 years ago in West Africa, helping women and children. Is that not God? Now don't tell me, oh, that's just luck. That's just happenstance. If I gave you the whole story, I will tell you that your intentionality will direct you down very specific paths, and your lack of intentionality will have you scattered everywhere, fulfilling nothing, doing nothing, being an example of mediocrity. I mean, and just making the whole thing just a mess. I mean, really, when your true destiny is right inside of you. Because once you have your infrastructure, and once you combine your infrastructure with intentionality, then you now can make choices as to where you want to go and how you want to do things. Lacking those things and an understanding and a willingness to govern your affairs and do everything in an orderly way, not scattered like, oh, I'm over here today, oh, I'm over there today, but be so clear that this is what I was born to do. It's so clear. And when I look at so many people that have wasted their lives and just wasted time, like you can recover time. No, you can't. You can get more money, but you can't get more time. So you're wandering around trying to figure out what you want to do. Oh, I need to get married. I'm like, no, you need to get clarity about why you're here. Who am I? And everything else will fall in line. It will. It will fall in line. Because God doesn't have schizophrenia. He deposits into everybody purpose and destiny. Yes, he does. You have a purpose which he expects you to take the time, energy, and discover, and then you have destiny, which is based on your intentionality. And that is the foundation for legacy. And like I said, you can look around you, you can read, you can study, you can go to Bible books, you can go to Quran, you can go to Torah, you can do whatever, but you will see that in every example presented, these people had intentionality and they went on to greatness. And when they got off of track is when things got kind of hairy, but they got back on track and got the race back in them to the finish line. And that's what I want for all of you that are listening and viewing. This show is so important because of the information I'm giving you. These are wisdom nuggets. Wisdom nuggets, exactly. Straight talk, but wisdom nuggets that can change your life on a dime. Each day presents another opportunity for you to clean it up and get it right. And some of that cleanup may require getting rid of people that don't get it. And they have the freedom. But let me just say right now, I believe in freedom of expression, meaning I don't have to agree with you to listen to you and to recognize that you have the right as a human being to expression. But it doesn't mean I have to embrace you, adopt you, involve you. It does not. That's not maturity. If you have nothing and you've ordered your life, and I say you've ordered it because nobody else has, if you've ordered your life to just be about nothing, then don't be upset because people that have intentionality on the positive, says you are expressing intentionality on the negative. Yeah, it's intentional. You don't want to get up. That's intentional. I don't want to work. That's intentional. Outcome. You already know the outcome. Life is going to move forward, and you won't be a part of the good, positive, creative force that people have the ability to bring. Powerful. So you've intentionally chosen, and for many of you, this is a revelation. What do you mean I did it? Who else did it? Who else did it? I didn't do it. Your parents may have laid a foundation, but they didn't do it because you are now a person, an adult, ability to make decisions and choices, good and bad, ability to process information positively or negatively, but it's still intentionality. So that's why I said spiritual, then infrastructure, then intentionality. Now, having gotten intentionality and you understand purpose and destiny, meaning I'm here for a specific purpose that I, by my own intentions, move forward on, and my destiny is good and positive before me. All things that are good and positive to propel me to a positive outcome will come into my space. I ain't trying to be weird. I'm just telling you that energy is a positive force, okay? It is. And if you tap into that and you gotta have your spirituality in place, there is nothing to stop you from reaching your goals. You may have setbacks. And trust me, life is not simple. Life is complicated. And then if you have children, it gets really complicated because you have to make sure they're trained. They don't have to have the school of hard knocks. My gosh, life is hard enough without you saying, 18, you need to get out. What are they going to do at 18? They don't know nothing. They don't know anything. They haven't done anything. So here you are as their leader telling them, time's up, you're grown. No, they're not. Maturing takes time, and many of us in our 70s are still immature. We still are waiting for our ship to land. Okay? At 70, if you haven't gotten your stuff together, the very best you can do for yourself is to put everything on pause and then look at what you need to get together for the remaining years of your life, if you're gracious enough to have remaining years. Okay, so we've talked about those three things, very core belief systems. Now, once those things are in place, there are what I call micro steps. That's a macro view that I just gave you. Spiritual, infrastructure, intentionality. Now let's talk about the micro part of your life, which is how do I have things in order so that my heirs can benefit? Yeah, and it's not too early to talk about it. It's very important because most people don't even know about it. Oh, I hear it bantered about, oh, I'm a king, I'm a queen. Excuse me, do you not know what that means? Do you not know what that really means in terms of intentionality? Because if you're declaring a position and you have nothing in place to make sure that position is the truth, then you are declaring a lie. Oh, no. Yes, yes. Because kings and queens run nations, run communities, run their families, not in a hostile, mean way, but they are leaders. They are intentional about outcomes. They're not haphazard about what they want. They don't engage in behavior that has negative results. Okay? It's okay to make a mistake, but when a mistake becomes chronic, there's something else going on. Okay? I'm just being open. I'm not trying to hurt your feelings because I'm not talking to you, but maybe I am talking to you. Okay, which is, get it together. And get it together right now. Party's over. Let's do it. So you say, I want to be a real rich man. Well, what is rich? What's the definition of rich? Do you mean lots of money? Or do you mean richness in relationships? Or do you mean richness in terms of a legacy for the world to be able to think about and reflect upon when you're gone? What is your definition of rich? And it's probably the result of the infrastructure. Because if you grew up in poverty, then rich may mean money. But lacking an understanding that money cannot ever, ever fulfill you and create a rich mindset. It's paper with faces printed on it. It trades, but money in and of itself has no intrinsic value other than what you give it. So a man who's making $50,000 a year, but is surrounded by loving family, loving community, and able to be a part of this and to pass on values to his or her grandchildren, that person, in my estimation, is very rich. Very rich. Okay? A person that may have millions of dollars and have no one, but they met their definition of rich, which is, I need lots of money. Well, you got lots of money. You got assets. You got money in the bank. You got money in the stock market. You got Bitcoin. You got cash. But where are you? Okay, you're surrounded by these things. None of them can comfort you when you're lonely or when you're sad or when you're scared and fearful. These things don't have the ability to touch your heart and kiss your soul. They're just stuff. But it does meet your definition of rich. So the concern I've had is, don't look at them in admiration. Are you intentional about what you've been set here to do? Okay? Since we're all connected, we are all, the whole world is connected. It's more than internet and drones and technology. The whole world is connected. We as human beings are all connected. We experience pain. We experience suffering. We experience joy. We experience hope. We give birth to other little human beings. Yeah, we do. We want comfort. We want clothing. We want things that keep us safe and secure. We don't like instability. We don't like things that look crazy and unstable. Look at Afghanistan. Look at what's happening with Haiti, with those people fleeing that country. They're like, I'll toss myself to the ocean and to the wind before I deal with that kind of instability. I mean, these are real life situations. Can you relate? I think so, because if you're in a home that's warm, your bills are reasonably paid, you've got loving relationships, that's priceless. You're already rich. You're full of rich. Okay? So it's important definitionally that you know what you need. So in this micro nugget, one of the things that you want to do as you get these things in place for intentionality is make sure that you have a financial program that will enable you to pass money, because money does answer everything. It does. And I will tell you that those who are wealthy, I didn't say rich, wealthy, buy lots of life insurance. Not for themselves, because you can bury yourself for $10,000 or less. They buy it for their grandchildren. Not their children, for their grandchildren. They set up these situations so that when they are gone, not only can their grandchildren say they were awesome, Paw was awesome, Mimi was awesome, but they have money. And that money will enable them to actualize their intentions. Young people have dreams and hopes, and don't you dare quash them because somebody quashed yours, okay? If they quashed yours, you had a choice at some point to reorient your life and do things different, and you still can and you still should if that's important to you. But money helps. So the legacy can begin with you leaving insurance contracts to your grandchildren as beneficiaries so that they will have the opportunity to not have to do debt. They can do and actualize their dreams. They can go to college. They can get a car. They can get real estate. They can travel. What's wrong with traveling and seeing how other people live? Okay? That's an eye-opener. I am telling you, my years of traveling have taught me a lot. Other people don't live like you do. They don't have your same infrastructure. They don't have your same experiences. And therefore, you should not be surprised at their perspective on life. Okay? But on the other hand, if they don't have the resources to do these things, that can cause and create in them a very closed-minded perspective on humans and on people. And I tell you, and this is just something you need to know, a factoid, less than 5% of Americans have ever been outside of America. And before you say, but it's a wonderful place, I'm not arguing with you. I'm just giving you data. Would it be helpful if you were able to do a cruise, an excursion cruise to Antarctica and learn about the things that are going on down there? Or would it be worthwhile to go to China rather than seeing it on the news or elsewhere? Would it be different to experience that? Or would it be of value to go to England and understand why England was culturally a very predatory nation, because they don't have any resources, so they got to plunder everybody else. They got to get some money, okay? But these are things that are available if your grandchildren have money and your children couldn't afford it, okay? That's basic, easy stuff. If you're worried about them spending it, talk to your estate planning attorney. And you don't have to be fancy-pantsy. Just tell them this is what you want to do. And they can set that up for you and make sure it's what you want, okay? You may want them to be able to go to college, if that's even relevant in 20 years. I don't know, okay? I was in school forever. I truly wonder as I look over my life if all that education was really worth it, other than it did equip me with certain skills that I couldn't have learned on the job. What does education do? Education exposes you to all kinds of systems and ways of learning and doing things that you can't get on your own. That's why you have a professor who typically has a PhD or an ABD, which is close to a PhD, and they assist you in your journey into adulthood and help you in that process so that when you graduate from college, you will have an understanding of how things kind of work, okay? I didn't say like a widget trying to make sure it screws on, but you want to see how things work in your chosen profession so that you will have an understanding and you can do it better. For some of us, that's not necessary. Go to trade school and fix electrical. You'll make a ton of money. I don't know how much insight you will have about people and how systems work, but it's an honorable profession, and trade schools are honorable for people that don't want to spend the money, take the time, and indulge in these types of things. It's a choice, it's an option, do something. That's my point. So, your grandchildren can have that option. The other thing has to deal with how you've handled your investments. And frankly, by the age of 50, if you haven't been able to save any money in America, I'm not talking about Africa or South America or Asia or even Northern Europe. I'm talking about the grand old USA. If you haven't been able to save any money by the age of 50, you don't have a house, you rent, you can't save because you're busily wearing clothes, shoes, and having a great time, then you've missed the mark because your intentionality is not focused. It's everywhere, and the outcome is everywhere. I'm telling you, when you get hungry, you cannot sell your shoes on Marketplace, Facebook, or Craigslist, or any of the other, eBay. No. So what happened? Well, again, like I said, spiritual, infrastructure, intentionality. Who am I anyway? What was I purposed to do? And am I doing it? And if I'm not doing it, am I clear as to why? Is this just a lull? Or if it's a life pattern? If it's a life pattern, you don't have a legacy to leave. I'm not kidding you. That legacy that you have let everybody see is that I don't even love myself enough to order my steps to be intentional about goals and fulfillment. I'm perfectly content to be mediocre, and you know what? That's okay. You can live life. Won't be a good life, in my opinion, because whenever you're not focused on positive, you're focused on negative, and you will have outcomes, okay? You won't have good health. That's the legacy, by the way. Good health, where your family knows that you want to be healthy, that you're willing to do the things that say you're healthy, you're willing to eat right, you're willing to live right. It's not just eating, it's your lifestyle, okay? And that you cannot be intentional on the positive and you're bar hopping all the time and spending money at the bar or spending somebody else's money at the bar. But the point is that there's no positive intentionality in that. And after a time, you will see what I mean. But legacy can be, again, good health, making sure that you get your yearlies, making sure you get the things that say you want to be around and healthy. Okay, you want to know what not healthy looks like? Go to any nursing home in America. Just go and schedule for a tour, and you will see the outcome, in many cases, of not healthy, not intentional, okay? And to make it even more sorrowful, their family members don't even come to see them because they don't want to catch what they got. That's the truth. They've told me in counseling, in financial reviews. Where's your mother? Oh, she's in this facility. Oh, when's the last time you visited her? I don't. What? Is there a reason? She didn't care about me. I didn't care about her. Well, I'm going to tell you something. That's called negative intentionality. And all you're doing is replicating that into your children and grandchildren. When you get old, nobody's going to come and see you unless you do something a little differently. So I'm putting this out, health as well as life insurance, finally looking at your other assets. Now, if you have other assets, now's the time to determine who gets them. And not the federal government and the Internal Revenue Service. They will get theirs. But who do you want to get your things? And how do you want to distribute? I recommend distributing while you're alive. Okay? My grandmother's pearls, which I adore, she gave to me when she was alive. And I wear them all the time because They're very precious to me, not just in terms of the memory, but she was a poor woman who left me that legacy of a gift of real pearls, not fakies, real cultured pearls. That was her heart to me. Is that a legacy? Yes, it is. So learn the power of gifting and giving now while you can, while they can hear you telling them the story behind the gift. Same thing with stocks and bonds and other investments. By all means, explore the power of gifting now so that they will have more than words to say when you leave. Because an obituary does not and should not tell your entire life. It gives snippets, okay? Snippets. So, the final thing I want to share with you, and this is most important, is govern your affairs that tell you and everybody else that you recognize that this is the most important thing you can leave to your family. If it's real estate, if it's money, if it's heart gifts, if it's your words of wisdom, okay? Even if the word of wisdom is don't be a fool like me. I mean, that's a real twisted way, but there are those of us out here that need to tell your family members, your grandkids, don't be a fool like me. This is what you need to do. This is why you want an education. This is why you want to be married to one woman, one man, and be faithful. Because life is a journey full of ups and downs, and you don't want to be involved in situations that can cause you physical harm. Oh yeah, people get killed over that stuff, as well as financial harm, because every time you divorce, you're losing it. You're on the dark side. You're losing it. You're losing resources. You're losing your heart because you trusted and it was violated. And that has a toll over time. I share these things with you on Planning on Legacy because these are just some thoughts that came to me. I shared them on my radio show, and I am sharing them for my viewers with the hope that you will think for yourself. Remember what Michelle Graves, the money lady, told you. I wish you only the very best in your life journey, but recognize that if you don't lay out the path called intentionality to the good, to the positive, to the joyful, to the hopeful, then you will be in a very, very sad place. And that's not your best. And you know I only do the best. So, on that note, I close out today's segment. Thank you for joining me. I hope you learned a few things that can guide you and direct you in the days ahead. And God bless you as always. Bye-bye.